The year 193 AD stands out in Roman history as one of betrayal, greed, and unrelenting ambition. In the shadow of the Palatine Hill, the Praetorian Guard, once the trusted protectors of emperors, gathered not to defend the empire, but to sell it. In their courtyard, an auctioneer's gavel struck against wood, the sound echoing like thunder through the silence. The throne of Rome, sold to the highest bidder. For centuries, emperors had earned their power through conquest, lineage, or Senate approval. But never before had Rome's destiny been reduced to a business transaction. Citizens whispered in shock, horrified as their empire, the crown of civilization, was treated like a slave at market. Soldiers cheered as gold passed into their hands, not realizing they were signing away Rome's dignity. The empire that had once conquered nations now auctioned its very soul, and this humiliation would ignite one of the bloodiest struggles in its history. This tragic moment was the result of a violent chain of events that began with Commodus, the son of Marcus Aurelius. His reign was marked by madness, cruelty, and games in which he fancied himself a gladiator. When conspirators assassinated him on the last day of 192 AD, the Senate quickly elevated Publius Helvius Pertinax, an elderly general of great respect. Pertinax entered office determined to restore discipline and stability. He cut wasteful spending, tried to strengthen the treasury, and curb the excesses that had weakened Rome under Commodus. Yet his strictness quickly won him enemies, particularly among the Praetorian Guard, who expected bribes and indulgence rather than order. After only 86 days, the guards stormed the palace. In a final act of bravery, Pertinax confronted them, pleading for reason, but he was cut down where he stood. The empire, leaderless once again, slid into chaos, and the path to the auction was opened. Into this void stepped Marcus Didius Julianus, a wealthy senator with ambition far greater than his wisdom. When word spread that the Praetorian Guard was selling the throne, Julianus rushed to the barracks, his voice competing with another bidder, Sulpicianus, the father-in-law of Pertinax. Like traders haggling in a marketplace, the two men raised their offers higher and higher until Julianus shouted the unthinkable sum of 25,000 sesterces per soldier. Greed won the day. The guards declared him emperor, carrying him to the palace while the Senate, terrified and powerless, confirmed the appointment. But in the streets, the people shouted insults, pelting him with stones and mocking him as a fraud. An emperor bought with silver, not earned by valor, dishonored centuries of tradition. Though Julianus sat on the throne, his rule was hollow from the first moment. His reign symbolized Rome's deepest humiliation, and the provinces were not about to accept it quietly. Julianus quickly discovered the price of power was far higher than the gold he had paid. The Praetorians demanded their reward, and the treasury began to empty at a terrifying rate. To appease the Senate, he offered bribes. To quiet the citizens, he staged spectacles. Yet the people mocked him openly, crying out, "You bought the empire, but you cannot buy us." Everywhere, whispers spread that the true guardians of Rome were the legions on the frontiers, not the greedy guards of the capital. These soldiers, hardened by years of war along the Rhine, the Danube, and in the deserts of the East, viewed Julianus with contempt. To them, the empire was sacred, forged in their blood, not something to be sold at auction. The news of Rome's disgrace traveled swiftly, and in far-off provinces, powerful generals prepared to answer this outrage with steel. Julianus's golden throne was already shaking beneath him. From the corners of the empire, three men declared themselves rightful emperor. In the east, Pescennius Niger, governor of Syria, was hailed as savior by his troops, who saw in him a man of justice and strength. In Britain, Clodius Albinus rallied his legions, presenting himself as a restorer of Rome's greatness. But it was Septimius Severus, commander of the Danubian legions, who posed the greatest threat. Severus was no stranger to hardship. He had risen from North African origins to command some of the most battle-tested soldiers in the empire. Fierce, disciplined, and cunning, he inspired loyalty among his men. Animated maps would show three massive armies moving like storm clouds toward Italy, each intent on seizing the purple. Rome stood at the center of their ambitions, and the question was no longer who would claim the throne, But how much blood would be spilled before victory was secured? Severus wasted no time. As Julianus struggled in Rome, Severus's legions surged across the Italian frontier, advancing with terrifying speed. Cities opened their gates willingly, unwilling to resist his power. Each victory added banners to his ranks, a symbol of inevitability. His soldiers were hardened veterans who marched with discipline, their eyes fixed on Rome. Severus portrayed himself as a liberator, promising to avenge Pertinax and restore honor. Meanwhile, Julianus scrambled to prepare defenses, ordering walls fortified and guards drilled. But his authority was paper-thin. Few were willing to die for a man who had purchased power. Even the Senate began secretly sending messages of support to Severus. As the days passed, Julianus's isolation grew. For the capital, Severus was no longer an enemy at the gates, but a destined ruler drawing ever closer, and the city braced itself for yet another violent transition of power. Realizing that Severus was unstoppable, Julianus tried to save himself with the only weapon he knew: money. He offered bribes to senators, larger rewards to soldiers, and desperate promises to the people. But no one would follow a man whose crown had been bought with silver. When Severus reached Italy, Julianus made one final attempt. He proposed that they share power, ruling as co-emperors. Severus refused. The Senate, sensing their chance to survive, quickly turned on Julianus. Betrayed and abandoned, he was seized in the palace and condemned. Facing execution, Julianus cried, "But what evil have I done?" The answer was silence. His reign had lasted only 66 days, the shortest and most shameful in Roman history. With his death, the auction throne was reclaimed, but the empire was not yet at peace. The storm of rival emperors was still raging, and Rome's fate would be decided on the battlefield. With Julianus gone, Severus secured control of Rome, but his true enemies remained. Pescennius Niger in the east commanded vast legions and posed a serious threat. For years, the east had provided Rome with wealth and resources, and Niger's power base was formidable. Severus marched eastward, determined to crush him. Battles erupted across Asia Minor, with towns switching allegiances and cities besieged. The decisive confrontation came at Issus, the same plain where Alexander the Great had once triumphed. Severus' legions fought with iron discipline, grinding down Niger's forces until they collapsed. Niger fled but was soon captured and executed, his head sent to Rome as a trophy. To ensure no further rebellion, Severus brutally punished cities that had supported Niger, filling the land with terror. The east was brought under his iron grip, but the empire's bloodshed was far from over. Another rival waited in the distant west, Clodius Albinus. Paragraph 9, Albinus's final gamble. Clodius Albinus was not to be underestimated. Governor of Britain, he commanded some of the strongest and most loyal troops in the empire. Initially, Severus offered him the title of Caesar, making him a co-ruler in name to avoid fighting on two fronts. But once Niger was destroyed, Severus turned against him. Betrayed, Albinus declared himself emperor outright. In 197 AD, their armies clashed at Lugdunum in Gaul, in what became the bloodiest civil war battle Rome had ever seen. Tens of thousands of legionaries met in a storm of steel, shields clashing, cavalry thundering across fields stained with blood. The battle lasted for hours, its outcome uncertain until Severus's discipline and strategy prevailed. Albinus's army broke, and the defeated claimant fell upon his sword. His corpse was desecrated, his followers executed, his family destroyed. With Albinus gone, Severus stood as the sole master of Rome, unrivaled and unchallenged. Thus ended the Year of the Five Emperors, one of the bloodiest and most chaotic chapters in Roman history. What began with the auctioning of the throne in a Praetorian courtyard ended with the rise of a ruthless new dynasty. Septimius Severus had crushed Julianus, destroyed Niger, and annihilated Albinus. He had won the empire not with gold, but with blood and iron. Standing before the Senate, Severus gave his chilling command for the future: enrich the soldiers and scorn all the rest. It was a declaration of how Rome would now be ruled, by military power above all else. The Severan dynasty had begun, and for decades it would shape the destiny of Rome. The year 193 AD revealed the empire's greatest weakness: greed, ambition, and betrayal. but also produced one of its most formidable rulers, a man who carved his legacy out of civil war and transformed Rome forever.